Hey, it's Alex
and Bella
from Let's Not Sugarcoat It, a podcast where each week we bring you real, raw, and unfiltered conversations.
Our guests share their life's journeys in entrepreneurship, relationship, parenthood, and much, much more
in an authentic and raw way where no one sugarcoats life's messes and successes.
Make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any of your favorite podcast apps, and tune in every Wednesday for new episodes.
Are you looking for inspiration on a daily basis? Well, check out Deal to Heal Tees. With our inspirational tees, you're sure to find something that will inspire you. Just go to dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. That's Deal to Heal Tees. Get some inspiration in your situation. Wear inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That's Deal to Heal Tees at dealtohealtees.myshopify.com. Hi guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you'll enjoy the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast. I'm your host, Earnest James. And on my podcast, my guests and I discuss topics and ways to help us to heal in every area of our lives. I believe that everyone can and should live a life that is whole, healed, and healthy. And therefore, I'm on a mission to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with their problems, heal from the pain, and to fulfill their purpose. So check out our podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, Spotify, or even on Audible. And if you want to watch the podcast, check us out on our YouTube channel at Deal to Heal with E. James Podcast. Until then, see you soon. Welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. We believe that the relationship between a dad and daughter is one of the most important relationships in a woman's life. Our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads to the world and give love and support to all of our dads and their daughters. Let's get to it. Let's tune in. Hey, welcome to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. I am your host, Earnest James, and we believe that the relationship between a father and daughter is one of the most important relationships that in a woman's life. And therefore, our mission is to promote the daddy-daughter relationship by spreading the voices of girl dads and daughters to the world and give love and support to all of our girls, to all of our daughters and their dads. Thank you guys very much for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. Make sure that you guys are checking us out on our new YouTube channel, which is the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. As you guys know, our partner podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, was our first podcast, but now we've added on more podcasts. So we changed our YouTube page from the Deal to Heal Podcasting podcast and to the Deal to Heal Podcasting Network. So make sure you guys go there and check us out. Also, again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll also be able to find our playlist there for the Girl Dad Discussions podcast there. So make sure you guys go there, like it, subscribe it, share it, as well as not just the YouTube page, but also on all of your podcast listening platforms. Make sure that you guys do that. Our product of the week, as you guys know, we are a self-sustained podcast. And the way that we stay on the air is by bringing you amazing products for you to purchase in order for us to help to pay our bills. So thank you guys so very much. Our product of the week is our Purpose Journal, as well as our Purpose Planner, because I believe we need to journal to keep track of the places that we've been in our lives and where we are, as well as planning for our future. So make sure you guys get that. Our Purpose Journal and our Purpose Planner. The links will be in the description. They're both available on Amazon at this time. So we'll make sure that you guys have the opportunity to check that out. So we're gonna jump right in it today, just like any other day. We are blessed with a guest, Miss Brittnee. How you doing?
I'm doing good, Ernest. How are you?
I am good. I am good. First of all, let me say thank you for being here because you could have been doing anything else with anyone else, but you're here with us, and we definitely appreciate it and want you to know that. So we're gonna jump right in this because this is gonna be a little different than usual because generally on the Girl Dad Discussions podcast we have other girl dads on, and so we're having a conversation with other girl dads. We also have had the opportunity to have several daughters on to talk about the relationship with the girl with their dads also. But your story is a little different, right? And it's coming from a different point of view. But I
Yeah.
think it's still very important for us to hear it. So let's just go back to the beginning. And so do me a favor, introduce yourself to my audience and tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do, and then we'll jump right into your story.
Absolutely, everybody. My name is Brittnee Hubbard. I am a wife. Me and my husband have been married for 8 years. I have three beautiful kids, 11, 10, and 4 years old. And right now, what I currently do right now is I am actually a graphic designer. I am a graphic designer. I am a author, of course, and I'm also a an entrepreneur.
All right, all the boxes. You're just checking all the boxes.
All the boxes, yeah.
You and me too. You and me too. So let's jump into your story a little bit,
Absolutely.
Brittnee, because again, you do have a different story than my regular guests, and
Yes.
so I won't even begin to even try to tell it. I'm going to turn it right back over to you, and then let's just jump right into it.
Yeah, most definitely. So, wow. My like I say, like you said, my story is a little bit different. I grew up basically without my father. I've always had that desire, like growing up, I've had that desire wanting to have a father around. So I always had that desire to be even a girl dad. Every time I would go to school and I will see see the girls at school, with their dad, they're dropping them off. And I even experienced, even in my own household, because with me and my siblings, they have different fathers, but I always experienced them going with their fathers. But my dad was basically the only dad that never came around. I never gotten a chance to really sit down and experience that girl dad, conversations, having the father sitting down and telling me things that a little girl should hear from their fathers. I didn't get a chance to experience that. And sadly, my experience with my father, the last time I had an experience with my father, and it wasn't a good one, it was when I was 8 years old. I ended up going to Waco, Texas, because that's where they're from. I went to go visit my father's side of the family. My grandparents on that side wanted me to come and visit them for the summer for a little bit. And it was supposed to be, I think, maybe like a 2 week trip, and it ended up really turning into literally like 3 days. Um,
Mm.
I end up going there, sitting down with my grandmother, and I remember my father actually walking in the front door, and I don't believe that he knew I was coming or that I was visiting or anything like that. Um, so when he walked through the front door, all I remember was I ran up because my grandmother had pointed out and said, "Hey, Brittnee, there's your dad." And me being excited, and I was like, oh, okay, hi, daddy. I'm running up to him and I give him a big hug, and my arms wrap around his legs, and
Mm.
all I remember is him looking down at me, and he didn't hug me back. So from there, I was just like, okay, what do I do? So I just basically I just stopped hugging him and I just ran back to the couch. And that's all I remember, of him. So that's just pretty much the memory that I had of my father. There's been numerous amount of times that I've been trying to reach out. I'll reach out, to other family members that's been on Facebook, that's on his side of the family. There's some people that, that don't know where he is. There's some people that talk to him. But of course, like I said, I just never had any luck when it comes to trying to talk to my dad, or even just having just a conversation with him to say, hey, Dad, I know you haven't been around. I know you haven't been in my life, but, I just wanted to let him know, hey, that I do forgive you for, all the stuff, that, but basically just for not being around, yeah, just for not being around, because I experienced a lot of things that I felt like if my father was there,
Yeah.
I really do feel like a lot of the stuff wouldn't have happened if he was there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a common feeling, and justifiably so, because it is a true feeling that a lot of things, we as fathers are supposed to be the protectors of our families, including our sons and our daughters. And when we are not in the right space, there are some things that are experienced, by our children, that they shouldn't have to experience, and probably
Right.
wouldn't have to experience had we been in our proper space. And so I remember even myself having this conversation with another young lady who I've been on her podcast several. Well, she's been on my podcast, this one and my other podcast. She was my first guest, my very first guest on my other podcast, and then she was the first female guest on this podcast. And her name is Jana, and because our stories is like me and hers is like the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm a girl dad who talks to fatherless daughters. She's a fatherless daughter who coaches fathers, right? About their
Wow.
reconnecting with their daughters. But I remember us even having the conversation, about talking to dads and getting them to realize that, there are some things that your child experienced in your absence, and you cannot neglect their emotions and their experiences, with you not being there just because now you decided to show up. There are some things that they've experienced. There are some feelings that they hold, maybe some resentment that they hold that is justifiable.
Right.
And just because you decided to show up today, don't mean that erases all the experiences that they've had and to that point. And so that's a conversation that we've had with dads. But before we dive a little bit more into that, I want to go back to something that you said, because it was sort of like a reflection of my story, but on the other side of it, right? So you mentioned about growing up and seeing your friends and other siblings, and other family members with their fathers, and kind of thinking about how, that longing for that. My experience was like on the opposite side of it, because I grew up with my father. My mom and dad were married until my mom passed away, and my dad is still here and active. But I remember growing up and going out and seeing all my friends and family who didn't have their fathers, and having that experience of knowing that there was something missing. Even at that young age that I was, like, I knew that my experience with having my dad in my life, having my dad under the same roof, having my mom and my dad there together, was just a different experience than my family was having, and some of my friends was having. And that kind of had a effect on me, even though I didn't necessarily recognize it then. But as I began to grow older, I began to realize how much of an effect that had on me, that gave me a heart for children, or for people in general who didn't grow up with their fathers. And again, I think that even plays a part too, back to my connection with the fatherless daughters. Like, I don't know why I connected with them, but maybe that stems as a part of it, because even at that young age, I noticed that, and I was moved by that my friends and family, there were some that didn't have their fathers actively in their lives. So would you say your experience, definitely, I understand that your experience had an effect on you personally then, but do you think that same, looking at it from an adult lens now, that same experience maybe even impacted how you move today? We'll get into your book and things of that, a little bit later, but do you think that experience even molded how you act as an adult in some spaces?
Most definitely, yes. Because if it wasn't for my father, not being around, I can guarantee you I would not, one, have the heart to even write the book that I wrote, for women, because I know that things happen to us for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact God allowed this to happen to me because there are so many women out there who don't have their fathers. But with everything that has happened to me, I really do believe that it did shape me. It shaped me to even, just the way I deal with my daughter, and in the way I teach her, and the way in the way that I tell her certain things, and I feel like for me, the way that it shaped me, the way that not having a father shaped me, oh goodness, oh my gosh, um it gave me a lot of strength. I will say that it gave me a lot of strength. um wow, it's it's kind of a tough question, but I mean, I don't fully know the full purpose just yet, because I'm only 32. But with not having my father around, like I said, I just know for sure that it put me in a place, and it put me in a position to where I can be that light, and I can be that testimony for women out there who go through, their daddy issues. That's what they call it. Like, daddy issues. They go around, they're sleeping around with different men. They're out just with anybody and everybody. They have low self-esteem issues. And I grew up with that. I grew up with having low self-esteem issues, always trying to find that person that's supposed to fill this gap that, or this hole that I had, just walking around feeling empty, just feeling like, okay, nobody wants me, and that is the furthest from the truth, for sure. And I can tell you for sure that is the furthest from the truth. Even if you grew up without your father, you are loved, you're special. And all of these statistics that that the world say women with that grew up without fathers, they're spoiled, or they don't know how to treat a man. That is the furthest from the truth. That because yeah, the furthest from the truth. Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Well, let's because you mentioned about being an example to the other women that you come across who may be going through the same thing of not having their fathers,
Yeah.
even to the point that you wrote a book. I
Yeah.
believe it's a journal. Tell us a little bit about that and that process, and then we'll talk a little bit more about getting to the meat and potatoes of it.
so so you want me to basically just let them know about why I wrote the book and how how
Yes.
yeah, okay. So honestly, this idea for this book, and it was a very easy process. And the reason why I say it was an easy process is because I believe I had so much stored inside of me.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since that situation that happened when I was 8, all the way into my adulthood, I I didn't really hold on to a lot because I don't remember being angry with my father. The only thing that I remember was just wanting to have that relationship. And also just remembering the things that I have experienced because my father wasn't there. I experienced being in domestic violence. I've experienced, dealing with sexual assault. And I feel like, of course, if my father was there, those things wouldn't have never happened. But the way that this book came to me, it came to me about, let me see, this is 2004. It came to me in 2001. It was just like a literal idea. It just dropped in my mind. And I'm like, what if I did a journal that basically just said, hey, Dad, I forgive you. And it was just so easy. And I can just show you the cover of it.
Mm-hmm.
This took me less than a day to design. And the whole book in its entirety only took me 2 days. And when I was writing it, I felt such a release when I was writing this book because I feel like okay, this is the reason why God allowed me to grow up without a father. That wasn't, of course, me not having my father, that's not of course, the life that I wanted. Definitely not the life that I wanted. Of course, like I said before, I've always wanted to be a girl dad. But once after I wrote this book, I felt just a little bit of purpose. Just a little bit of purpose, and it just kind of made sense in a way. And it just kind of made everything clear. Like, Brittnee, this is why you had to go through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are women out there who need to hear your story. There's women out there that need to know that, yes, you don't have your father, but you can still grow up and you can still be that successful woman. You can still be that woman that's full of confidence, that's sure of themselves. The woman that is, a good mother, a good wife. You can be a good wife even if you grew up without your father. I knew after I wrote that book that is the reason why that God allowed me to experience that.
So is the book a hybrid of your story and being a journal, or is it more like a journal with prompts that prompts them to kind of work through their emotions and things that they're dealing with?
Yeah, it's most definitely a prompt. I mean, I have a page that kind of goes through a little bit of my story, but most of the journal, it is basically day by day. It has, it has forgiveness quotes, but it also has prompts to, for that woman to go through and say, okay, you know, yes, I didn't have my father, but I am successful because, or it really, like I say, it really goes down deep into a lot of different things, but to answer your question, it is a prompt based journal.
Yeah, and I'm listening to you, and I definitely agree with there are some things that we are allowed to go through in order to become who we are, who we're meant to be, and especially those of us who I believe have a purpose connected to our lives. And so there are some circumstances that we have to go through in order to be able to fulfill that purpose.
Absolutely.
And so I even talk about the things that I've been through, not necessarily on this podcast. I haven't talked about it, but on the Deal to Heal podcast, I often talk about, my divorce, my
Mm,
depression, suicidal ideations, and the things that I've been through personally.
yeah.
But I've come to this place, especially after the last couple of years, and kind of working through my journey of self-development and really looking at my life and figuring out who am I at this point. I've
Yeah.
come to realize, and I tell people Now I say I don't care what happens to me, right? Because I know that whatever is happening for a reason.
Absolutely.
And I can reflect on these last couple of years and everything that has happened in these last couple of years. I'm talking about I got divorced and going through that season, and that has nothing to do with my ex-wife. We're very good friends. We've known each other since kindergarten, so we were friends before we were married. You know what I mean? So we're great friends. But we did end up getting divorced. But coming out of that divorce and finding myself at that space that I was in and going through the changes that I've been through, the divorce can be looked at as a negative thing. Like you went through the
Right.
divorce and you're all of that. But I look at how much has came out of that because
Right.
it was the divorce that made me realize my connection to fatherless daughters. And it was that connection that made me start the Friends of Fatherless Daughters Instagram page. That took me on the journey of being a guest on podcasts, to starting my own podcast, and then to starting this podcast.
Right.
So it all was a journey of things that has dominoed from an experience that could very much be looked at as a negative experience. And I do believe it is. I do believe divorce is a negative thing in some cases. Sometimes it's necessary, unfortunately. But yet that experience and coming out of that experience have birthed so many other things that I believe is connected to my purpose and to the things that I'm doing now. And so I say that to say, because sometimes when we're talking to people who grew up without their fathers, of course there is the indication like he should have been there. But then there are some times that just maybe, there's a reason for him not being there, And even in the midst of that, not only could it be connected to your purpose, but it may have been for your protection.
Absolutely.
He may not have been a good dad. You know what I'm saying? And maybe that was God's way of saying, look, I'm going to protect you. I know you want him, but I know best. And so I'm going to protect you from having him. And not only am I going to protect you, but I'm going to give you purpose in the midst of it so that you can go forth to help others that are going through similar things that you went through. And so, I'm listening to you talking about, just being able to write the book and how it came so freely. And I think that's because it's so much connected to your purpose. And when you start walking in your purpose, then things starts to flow like that. And you find yourself, like, how did I get here? You know what I mean? But it just all be a part of God's plan and his purpose for your life. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No. And you're absolutely right. And it's so funny because I never thought of it that way. So I'm glad you said that. I didn't think that not having my father would be, I guess a way of God protecting me. Because I didn't know exactly like what would happen. And that is something to really think about. Like I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, I'm like, is that, like, is that the reason why? But, and like I said, who's to say, what the reason why, my father wasn't there. But what I can say is, regardless of him not being there, I still experienced a blessed life, and I'm still experiencing a blessed life, without him. Even though, like I said before, there's times where I kind of wish I did have him, but that doesn't stop. That doesn't stop me, and that shouldn't stop anybody else for living a good life. Because regardless, God still blesses us regardless.
Yeah.
And he shows me that every single day. Every single day. He shows me, look, no, you didn't have him, but I'm here and I got you.
Yeah. And I think your voice is so I think it's part of what's missing in this conversation, right? Because you wrote the book, The Dead I Forgive You. And I think that forgiveness is so big in this space because it's so much needed. Because again, going back to those experiences that sometimes we have in the midst of absent father, you know, there are some experiences that's like, dude, I wouldn't have had to go through this if you was here, you know. But to then still be able to say, regardless, I'm going to forgive you for not being here. You know, I'm going to forgive you for not being in the space where I believe that you should have been, that naturally you really should have been, you
Right.
know, because I remember reading another book. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was a book by a young lady who it was about fatherless daughters, and she was a fatherless daughter, but she talked about her experience this one particular time with her father, and at this moment in the book they had already you know, reconnected and everything. And she was an adult, you know, at this time, with children of her own. But it just happened to be the day for the conversation, right?
Wow.
So
Yeah.
she mentioned that they're standing in her kitchen of her home, and he's there, the two of them. And like I said, it just was the day for the conversation. And she turned around to him and she said, "Why weren't you there?" You know,
Ooh.
again, she's an adult with kids of her own at this moment, and he started to kind of go into his reasoning, you know, for not being around, and she stopped him and she said, "The only thing I want to hear is you to say I'm sorry," you know. And so she said it was a pause for a second, and then he looked at her and he was just like, "I'm sorry, you know, I'm sorry that I wasn't there." And uh,
Wow.
she said they had this moment where they just embraced and they both cried, you know. But it was that moment of him just, you know, asking for forgiveness and her giving forgiveness, even though they had already reconnected at this time. You know, they
Right.
were already back active in each other's life, but they hadn't had that moment of fulfillment and forgiveness in a spoken actual moment and say we're going to address it head on. You know, and I
Ooh.
think that is something that is missing so much in this space,
Yeah.
because sometimes we don't, you know, as the child, we don't get the opportunity to get the forgiveness or to get the acknowledgement
Ooh.
that they were wrong. You know what I
Wow.
mean? And
Yeah.
so when we start talking about forgiveness, that's when we start to have to dig into that, because sometimes you have to forgive without the apology. You know what I
Ye-
mean? Sometimes you have
Yes.
to forgive a person who may not be worthy of your forgiveness, but
Ooh.
yet and still you have to forgive in order to free yourself. And so
Absolutely.
when you talk about your book and saying, "Dad, I forgive you," you know, probably even though you don't deserve it, even though you didn't ask for it, even though
Ooh.
I probably part of me really don't want to, but I know there's so much freedom that is to be released in me when I release what I'm holding against you, that there's going to become healing after that. So when you were writing this book, how much of that played a part in your own experience? And then even after your own experience, how much of that are you hoping that the women that come and read your book and actually go through the journal and write out their experiences, that they can come to this space of forgiveness?
Wow. That was a mouthful. Gosh. Wow. So, woo, goodness. Yeah, that was a mouthful. But wow. I'm sorry.
You're okay. You're okay.
Yeah, that because it just kind of brought up a lot. I'm not gonna start crying. I'm not. um, geez. Well, with when I was writing it, like I said, I mean, a lot of healing did happen when I was writing it. And then also another part that I did not tell was a couple of days before I started writing the book, I did have a small I had a small experience with, with my dad's side of the family when I wanted to reach out again because, like I said, I never stopped, reaching out to see if I can, at least try to just try to get in contact with them. I did experience, having, my sister on that side of the family, and it was just a very, very ugly experience. She just, she basically just told me, oh, you're not your father's daughter. You're not even his, and just going on and just being very, very ugly. And then I got in contact with his late wife at the time, because she did pass away. I got in contact with her, and the thing that she told me, she says, I know about the other kids, but I don't know about you. And then when she said that, I was like, okay, so it's not just the other kids, not experiencing that. At that point in time, it felt like it was only me. So when I had that thought and I said, oh, it was only me, I started having those feelings of, okay, is that the reason why I was not feeling worthy, or the reason why I was experiencing the low self-esteem? Is that the reason why I felt like I had to settle and go into this abusive relationship with a man who didn't even love me? Is that the reason why? But at that moment, when I started writing, it really just allowed me to, like I said, release everything that I have felt, everything that I experienced when it comes to not having my father. And one thing that I want women to get, if they ever decide to get the book, I just really want them to experience healing, experience. And just like you said, sometimes the people that you have to forgive, sometimes you're not going to get an apology from. Like I said, I have not heard from my father. I haven't gotten a text. My grandparents, they've even given me his phone number. I've texted him so many times and I never got a response. So at that point in time, it has to come to a point where you just have to accept that, okay, if he doesn't reply back, if I never get a chance to talk to him, I still have to be in a space to forgive him. I have to be in a space to let go, and I have to be in a space to, to heal. You know, um, I definitely want women to do that. I don't want women to walk around bitter, because I know having bitterness and having unforgiveness and thinking everybody's, after you, or everybody is trying to be mean to you, or everybody's just trying to ruin your life. It's like I said, it's not true. And I know sometimes just having that one person hurt you can make you feel that way. Having that one person, especially if it's your father, you think, oh, that was the one person that was supposed to love me. But now, since he doesn't love me, now I have to go in this world and experience, or I have to accept other people not loving me. And that's, like I said, that is the furthest from the truth. You do not have to go, you don't have to go in this world thinking that just because one person didn't love you, another person won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I said, I have my husband. Like I said, we've been married for 8 years. He loves me. He loves our children. Even with the older two kids, they're not even his. They're from my ex-husband, the one that I experienced abuse with. He loves on them. I have love from my father-in-law. So, you know, no, I didn't grow up with my father-in-law. I didn't have the little daddy, girl daddy, dances that they probably have in school. I didn't experience all of that. But I feel like even though you've experienced all these things, God will still put in place, and he will put people in your life, and he will put experiences in your life that will honestly outweigh everything that you have ever been through. And I can say with so much confidence that that is what I have experienced. But for sure, for any woman that gets this book, I just really want everybody to just experience that healing. Just let go. It's no need to walk around bitter, angry, and thinking all men are the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not true.
That's
Not
right.
true. Yeah.
That's right. I wanna transition a little bit into the next segment of the podcast, which is it's called the Get Into the Core segment. And the Get Into the Core segment is built off of the ebook, The Four Core, which is the four core values that every daughter should get from her father, which I wrote. And I sent you a copy of it. And I'm
Yes.
listening to what you were saying, because there is a brief segment in the book, right? The book is called The Core Four, and we talk about
Mm-hmm.
those core values. But there's also a brief segment that I write about called The Poor Four. And the
Mm.
Poor Four is those values that you may attract by no fault of your own, but as a result of not getting the core four from your father. And so you mentioned a couple of things about some women becoming promiscuous and looking for love in all the wrong places and looking for
Yeah.
these people to fill that void that were
Mm-hmm.
never going to, you know. And
Right.
so those are some of the poor values, as I call them, that you may pick up as a result from not getting the core four values from your father. And so
Right.
when we talk about the core four values, those four values is guidance, affirmation,
Mm-hmm.
love and affection, and protection. And I believe that these were, as I was writing this book, again, me being a girl dad, as well as me growing up with my father and watching him raise my five sisters, and then my relationship with uh, fatherless daughters, that I've dated and just been in contact with over the years, and just kind of breaking it down to what I felt were at its core those values that were most important, that as a father, not only did I impart in my daughter, but just in general, I think is important for other fathers to give to their daughters too. So just in your experiences, and you look at those core four, which again is
Mm-hmm.
guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection. Which one of those values to you would probably have been the most important value for you to receive personally, that you think would have made a great difference, and even in who you are as a woman today?
In my opinion, I would say, honestly, I would say the affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the affirmation because, um, and like I said, I'm just thinking back, you know, even with me growing up without my father, other things that I've experienced, just within my childhood, I did go through a phase, not even a phase, goodness, it was from third grade all the way to high school. I did deal with bullying, and
Mm-hmm.
it was it was bad. It was bad to the point where when I was 16, I did think about committing suicide. It was that bad because I already experienced, not having not having my father and him not being there. So I already had that small thought in my mind. Okay, well, maybe, is something wrong with me? And then now when I have that thought, now I go to school and I have everybody picking on me. I have teachers picking on me. I have the students picking on me. When I go home, you know, you know, it was okay at home. The environment. I mean, like I said, yeah, it was okay. But I had some family members who made fun of me. Also, they made fun of my body and the way my body was shaped, or how, or I wasn't as curvy as them, or whatever the case may be. So now I have all of this stuff coming to me, and it's, I feel like it's destroying my self-esteem. And I'm not gonna lie, even in church,
Mm-hmm.
I've experienced those things even in church. So all of that, it was almost like it was literally, it just really felt like it was just all planned to destroy me. But if, like I said, if I had my father in, and I feel like if I did have him, the most important thing that I know for the fact that I needed was affirmation, because I felt like I didn't get it nowhere else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. So
Yeah.
last question. Last question. Hopefully this one is a little easier.
Yeah.
The ebook is called the Core Four, which is the four core values that I believe that every daughter should get from her father. But if there could be a fifth value that you could add, what would that fifth value be?
Hmm. My goodness. A fifth value. Mm, that there's a tough one, because I know the ones that you have are like the ones that, I mean, I know for sure that every girl needs, but goodness, if I had to add a fifth one, mm, goodness, that is a tough one. No, it really is. It really is a tough one. Oh my gosh.
You don't have to answer it right now. It's just one of
Yeah.
the regular
No, like I
questions.
said, that's a
That
that's a
may be
tough
something
one.
you can
Yeah.
contemplate in your spare time for your own sake.
Yeah.
Um, but I really I want to say, first of all, thank you for being on. Thank you for
No
coming
problem.
on and sharing your story and your journey again, because I think it is a part of this conversation that we don't often talk about, from the other perspective. And then definitely talking about forgiveness, I don't think we talk about that enough. And
Yeah.
so thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, for writing this resource, for the other women that may be going through the same thing that you
Absolutely.
grew up going through. And I know that there's going to be some healing for them to go through as they work through it, just as much healing as it came for you as you were writing it. So I know that I know that there's going to be some healing that take place. I want you to have the last word, right? I want you to have the last word. I want you to leave us with a word of advice, inspiration, however you feel,
Okay.
for the fathers, or maybe for the daughters, however you feel, and definitely leave us with your social media handles and where we can find the book and things of that nature. So I'll give you a couple seconds
Absolutely.
to think about that. To my listeners, while you guys are here, let me say thank you guys for tuning in. You're listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast. But if you ever thought about writing your own podcast, maybe you guys can get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now ebook in only 3 steps from ebooksbyejames.com. I wrote this ebook because I was getting asked so many times of how do I start a podcast? And I even started a group and I was showing people, and other people were calling me. Everybody still asking me, how do I start a podcast? So I said, I'm gonna make it easy for myself and for everybody else. I'm gonna write this book called Start Your Podcast Now in only 3 steps. I made it very easy. So you can get your copy of the Start Your Podcast Now ebook from ebooksbyejames.com. Make sure you guys go there and check that out. Also, make sure you guys are checking us out on our website. You can go to dealhealfulfill.org. Again, that's dealhealfulfill.org. That is my main website where you can find more about the work that I do and things that I have going on, including me being a speaker and a workshop presenter. And there's also a page there where you can book me to have me to come out to talk to your students or your organization. So make sure you guys go there and check that out. There's also, again, ebooks by ejames.com, where we have several ebooks that I've written to help you guys. Again, we talked about the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father is one of the ebooks. But then we also have a ebook called From Males to Men, which is a male mentoring ebook for young boys. And then we have an ebook called Forgiving Me, the 4 Steps to Self-Forgiveness, as well as the Start Your Podcast Now ebook. So those ebooks all are available at ebooksbyejames.com. Again, that's ebooksbyejames.com, where you can go there and order those books. Also, check us out at dealtohealtees.com. That's deal, the number 2, healtees.com. Put some inspiration in your situation. Wear an inspirational tee and be inspired all day. That is our tagline. You guys can go there and see all of the amazing inspirational tees that we have available, including our podcast merch, which is our t-shirts with our logo of the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, as well as the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast t-shirts are available with our podcast logos on it. So you guys can go there and check that out. Last but not least, over the last couple of years, I've been blessed to be a part of an organization called the Forgiveness Mission. And what we do, we have free virtual workshops every other month talking about forgiveness, what it is and what it's not, who forgiveness is for, what does it mean to forgive, just really having the conversation around forgiveness, because I believe it is such an important topic that we have. Definitely it's played a part in today's episode, but it plays a part in our everyday life with the people who we forgive and those when we hold grudges, and how it affects us personally, because forgiveness is not necessarily for the person you are forgiving, but it's for you and your healing. So make sure you guys check that out. Again, it's free virtual workshops every other month. Whenever you listen to this, either one is coming up or one just ended. So you can go to forgivenessmission.com to check that out, or just go to Eventbrite and look up Forgiveness Workshop held by the forgivenessmission.com in order to register for the next free virtual workshop. All right. So again, Miss Brittnee, I want to say again, thank you so very much for being on. Thank you for coming on to sharing your story and your expertise. I want you to have the last word. So the floor is yours.
Absolutely. First of all, Ernest, thank you so much. I believe what you're doing is extremely important, and it is so needed. So I thank you for even creating this platform, because it is going to help so many people, and I really do believe that. And for those who do want to follow me, my Instagram, it is simple. It is Hey Dad, I Forgive You. And also the book is also, again, I'll show you guys again. It's called Hey Dad, I Forgive You. This beautiful big pink book. You can find it on Amazon, and all you have to do, again, just type in Hey Dad, I Forgive You, and I'm literally the first one that pops up. And also the thing that I want to say is for my dads that's out there, for the dads that are in their little girl's life, and even the ones that's not, please, I beg you, just continue to, just continue to be in your little girl's life, because she needs you, no matter if she's 5, 10, 15, even 30, like me. I guarantee you, every little text message, even if you feel like it's not a lot, even if it's a, hey, sweetheart, how are you? Just do something. Just be available for your little girl, because I guarantee you, just that one little message, I guarantee you it will mean the world to her if she gets it. And whenever she gets it, if you're the father that's in your little girl's life, I guarantee you she's not going to take it for granted. So definitely just continue to be in your little girl's life, and everything will be all right.
All right. We can't end it no better than that. To my listeners, thank you guys once again for tuning in to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we believe that one of the most important relationships in a young lady's life is the relationship between the dad and daughter. So make sure you guys are taking out that time to be in the midst, and to be available and be present in the lives of your daughters. And to all the daughters from a father, we love you. Until next time, you guys be blessed. Thanks for listening to the Girl Dad Discussions podcast with E. James. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our podcast on all your podcast listening platforms. Also, don't keep it to yourself, but share it with someone else that the Girl Dad Discussions podcast is on the air. Until next time, be blessed.
Wait. Don't skip this if you're a parent. Let me tell you that you should listen to our podcast, Let Kids Play Podcast. Why? Because our children are lacking creativity and problem-solving skills. On this podcast, we laugh, we have special guests, we talk about the traditional and homeschooling needs, and give you tips and hacks and things like that to enhance your experience of teaching your little ones under 5 years old. You can find the Let Kids Play podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts.